Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2, Episode 9. It's called The Measure of a Man. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. This is a biggie, and I know it's a biggie just because I'd heard of it before. I'd heard the name numerous times. People often bring this episode up. And when I read the description last week, I kind of like, oh yeah, I vaguely think I've heard that that's what it's about. But I couldn't have told you when you just said, well, what's that episode about? I would never have been able to hit on it. But the episode is about, of course, whether or not Data can be classed as a sentient being with rights or a machine that has no rights, that is property of Starfleet. That is the ultimate thing it comes down to. I think what I like about this, first of all, is the way the episode starts. It kind of starts as if that's not what the plot's going to be. It's like it just happens to be like a little detail that this doctor, this scientist, wants to do this. But then the episode just completely diverts into being about that, and everything else is just background noise. Everything else was just there to set this up. So I guess what I want to compliment in that sense is that it kind of did this neat thing where it felt like it was setting up a main plot that was something else, but not in a way that it felt like I felt unfulfilled once it diverted. It just felt like, it was early enough in the episode that it felt like, oh, this admiral coming on board is going to be a big deal, or this,
It felt like it was going to be an average, okay, we're just doing an average, regular weekly plot, and then out of nowhere it hits you with something else entirely.
And that thing ends up being the best episode so far. And we said that about last week's episode, which means we're on a streak. We're on a streak of 2 great episodes.
It's officially a streak now, yeah. Well, it won't last long, I'm sure, but we'll enjoy it while it lasts.
I'm just going to check the rating of the next episode of IMDb now you've said that.
Hey, we can get 3, I'll take it.
It's not 3. We're not getting 3.
Oh,
we may not hate the next episode, but it's not going to be these 2. It's not going to be this streak.
Well, they can't all be.
Yeah. And this episode's brought up a lot. I feel like this is probably considered one of the best episodes of the entire show, never mind this season. So, obviously, when we do our top 5 at the end of the season, I expect this will probably appear. But
I'll be shocked if it doesn't.
Yeah, so Maddox is this guy that comes on board, and then the other major character we can introduce here early on, major for this episode, is Philippa, this JAG captain that Picard's got a history with, outright to the point where she kind of makes some sex jokes when they first meet at the start of the episode, which is irregular for an interaction with Picard. Like, I mean, hell, it's surprising to Star Trek in general, but at least with some of the others now, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I'm kind of used to this.
More on that later.
Yeah, more on that. I cannot believe what they brought back. I cannot believe my eyes and my ears.
I was shocked.
Not only did they bring something back, they used it in a dramatic way, which is unbelievable. Like, because I thought there was just a little. Oh, we'll get to it. Anyway, so Maddox comes on board, and Admiral just wants to see around the ship. This Admiral who's with him. He's like, oh yes, but as soon as he comes on, he's sort of staring at Data, and Data kind of notices him and stares back a little bit. And it's very quickly before he's like, Admiral, and he's like, oh yes. He's got a request. He needs to take Data to do some studying on him. And we find out quite quickly that he wants to dismantle Data. And Picard quite right away is a little bit, this sounds
quite extreme.
That's a bit extreme. So he takes him to the ready room, and they have a proper, questioning about it. He's like, hey, okay, explain exactly what you're wanting to do, why you're wanting to do it, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, okay, so I've been following the work of the guy that made Data. I've been trying to sort of recreate it and build my own, and I can't quite nail a few details, so I'm going to take Data apart to do this. But as he's describing the process that he's going to do, which is fairly vague, but he does mention at one point that he's going to dump Data's memories into the computer for like storage.
Essentially, create a backup and then wipe him, and then take the backup and put it back in.
And I immediately sort of like went, oh, that sounds a bit like, well, something happens to the backup. Like, that was my feelings. And Data himself actually put a different spin on it later, which actually I thought made it even more interesting. Like the problem with this, because Data put it in terms later where he said, okay, so you can put all the knowledge I have onto a backup, but there's something else with memories that I don't think is technically information. Like the way you feel about memories, the experiences you have and what you gain from memories aren't quite the same as just the knowledge themselves. So Data is worried that even if it is successful, that all that element of him, the actual growth that he's had as a being, which will go with it.
I actually think it's very interesting, given how this ends and some stuff Data says later on. The fact that that's his concern here is interesting.
Yeah, it's not the details he's worried about; it's the experiences of what's happened to him, and Picard. And this is another thing. Credit to Picard is that there was no time when Picard's talked into this. He just right away says, "You know what? Given what you've said, this just sounds dangerous. Data's a valued member of this crew. We can't do this. Like, I'm not letting you. I'm not permitting it. He's my crew member. He's my lieutenant. I'm not doing it." And Maddox is prepared for this. He's like, "Well, no, I went over your head. I've got him transferred to a station because they're at a station right now. They're like docked at a station. Well, they don't dock. They don't need to dock. They've got transporter beams, so they don't need to dock literally. But they're essentially docked, for lack of a better thing. But anyway,
they're a geostationary orbit.
Yeah, sure. Yes. There you go. Car with the sides. So it's like, oh shit, and how do we deal with this? And Picard goes to see Philippa. Data is very concerned, and he's like, "Hey, does he have any options here? Does he have any options in this predicament?" And she's like, "Well, the one thing he can do to stop being transferred, because if that's Starfleet's orders, that's Starfleet's orders, and it's out of your control. But the one thing he can just do is resign and just not be a Starfleet officer anymore." And again, to my surprise, he actually does this. We see him pack his things, and he's ready to go.
He's like, "Well, if that's the way it's got to be," and we have a goodbye party with gifts.
With gifts, yes. He doesn't quite get wrapping paper. He thinks he has to unfold it carefully and neatly and take it apart so it can be used again.
I know people who actually do this. Who are like, no, we'll keep it, we'll reuse it. I'm like, just rip the damn thing. It's cheap as shit. No one cares.
Yeah, I want everyone to know, by the way, I'm sick as we record this. So if I'm coughing occasionally, I'll try and mute it if it's going to be annoying, but bear with me. I want you to know, because my voice feels raspier. I don't know if it actually sounds raspier.
Not by much.
Not by much. I'm only
not to the extent where mine does.
I'm only in day one though of this illness, so maybe a rough couple of days ahead.
Oh God.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
We got more important things to do tomorrow as well.
I know, and I'll get through the dust tomorrow. I will, but I'm saying that it's going to be a rough couple of days for me. All right, so. But I think more importantly here is the idea that Data is willing to do this tells me what those experiences mean to him. The idea of like just jumping into this, because Data says himself that he doesn't believe that the information that Maddox has presented him with the process that he's going to do doesn't like give him confidence. He doesn't think this is going to work. He thinks it's going to be a failure. It feels slapdash.
It's basically like, hey, you're on the right lines. I understand why you're asking this, but I don't think you're qualified enough yet, essentially.
Yeah, and to be fair, the way his demeanor tells me that he is kind of jumping the gun. Like he's desperate, he's excited about doing this, but he's not necessarily there yet.
Yeah, definitely. But it's not just that this is an out of nowhere idea. It is like, okay, at some point this could be a valuable part of the process, but right now it's just because he thinks he can.
Yeah, and we get this great scene where Data is packing away his prized belongings, the things that he cares about, his heirlooms, he's putting his stuff in, and of course the one that made me laugh out loud, was a little hologram of Tasha Yar. And even just before we get what this means to Data, and I think we'll talk about that more actually in the courtroom or the hearing later, but I just want to say that when he looked at this moment here, and he looks at Tasha just sort of standing there, sort of smiling in this little hologram, I thought to myself, you know what? I want to give them credit, because I did not think for a second that when they killed her off as quickly and as ridiculously as they did, that they would remember she existed 2 episodes later. And this is the second time this season that her images appeared, in reference to Data, actually, no less, because the last time it was when he was his head like scanned or whatever. And not only that, to use it in a dramatic way later in the hearing is like, they're making lemons out of lemonade. I can't fault this.
Yeah,
it did make me laugh though in the scene.
Yeah, me too.
So
I was just when she popped up, I went, they're actually remembering.
Yeah, it was interesting, and this is the scene where Data talks about what his memories mean to him, and how the information might be stored on a computer, but the idea of the experience and what he learned and how it felt won't necessarily be attached to them. He's worried that it will just be the raw information, and I'll use it intentionally this time, the raw data. That's what he's scared of here. So, and Picard's sad to see him go. Everyone's, I think Geordi especially, because they kind of established an episode or two ago that Geordi's kind of his best friend.
Yeah, they did.
And he does look kind of upset, you know?
Probably back to the Sherlock episode.
Yeah. Because there's another scene somewhere around here before this where Data goes to Picard's room, and Picard sits down, sort of tries to talk to him about what's been requested of him, and do you think this is going to work? And do you yada yada, and Picard tries to kind of, even though he's on Data's side, and we've already seen that he's tried to like stop this from happening, he tries to at least give Data the idea of like why it's going through, and Data gives this wonderful I love this sentence from Data, where he brings up Geordi, he brings up Geordi's eyes, and he says Geordi's visor is technically superior to human eyesight. So why then isn't every human in Starfleet why don't they all get their eyes removed and replaced with this synthetic solution? Because it's technically on paper better. Why not do that? And Picard, I love Picard's reaction to this. He can't answer him.
He's just stumped.
He knows that they would never do that, but he can't give him a straight answer, and it's kind of beautiful. He is genuinely stumped by it. I love that moment.
Yeah, it's great
moment. So then, of course, Maddox goes back to Philippa. We see that this is off screen, we don't see this, and then Picard goes to see her, and we find out that they're basically arguing that Data is the property of Starfleet, and therefore has no choice to either turn down the procedure and to resign. He can't resign because he's a computer, essentially. He's compared to a toaster, he's compared to the ship's computer. Like, you have the computer refuse to do a process of any kind. Would you accept that? Would you say the computers get it right?
You just reset it and solve the problem, is what they're saying.
And Maddox always refers to Data as it. He never says he. It's very notable. He's a very unlikable guy. Like, very quickly, he's a bit of a dick.
He'd get on well with Pulaski.
I thought it was interesting that never, like, Pulaski's at the birthday thing, and she's at the opening scene, because the opening scene is another sort of classic Data scene where they're playing poker, and
he's extremely confident and gets out bluffed.
He gets out bluffed, and that's how he's beaten, because Riker out bluffs him, and he doesn't understand. Like, wait, why did you look so sure? You had a losing hand. It's like, yeah, but I was banking on you not believing that I was going to win, or believing that I was going to win, rather. And yeah. Also, I need to learn how to play poker at some point so I can understand half the crap they say in some of these scenes.
This was not any poker I was familiar with.
Yeah, I don't think I know really any of the main poker types. Because at the end when Pulaski's dealing, she's like, oh, it's this, because it's one of these things where she says what sort of type of poker they're playing. It's like, oh, this card, that high, that, and then last card bluff or so. I don't know. Like, it was all nonsense to me. I don't understand a word of it.
Yeah, no, that bit. Whatever. I can play Hold'em well enough.
Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the most common that in my experience.
I'm going to have to do some Google. I'm going to have to learn how to play poker just for, because I like playing cards, when the opportunity arises. But
poker's fun, yeah.
But I've never, for some reason, whenever, me and friends, I played most of when I was in school, to be honest, but it was never poker. It was always various other card games.
You need a good group for poker, though, as opposed to some other card games where you can play with 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Oh, you need at least 5 or 6 for it to be interesting.
Yeah, Switch was our main game of choice back in the day.
Which one's Switch?
Switch is like Uno, but it's got a few other specific rules that I think makes it more fun. Because you can effectively combo into a victory in the first move if you get lucky enough, and I like that excitement. I've only ever done it once.
Fair enough. I'm not familiar, but
anyway, and Picard tries to argue this. He's like, "No, I'm going to object to this ruling. Under no circumstance am I letting you do this to Data. Like, you can't treat him like this. He is a sentient being. And he has rights. He should have rights like everyone else." And it's like, well, we're going to have a hearing then, and it's because this station's new and it's short staffed. Like, we're going to, Picard, you'll have to defend Data as the highest ranking officer, and Riker, who's also in the room at this time, you're going to have to prosecute because you're the next ranking officer. And Riker, again, I love the character writing in this episode because he rightly stands up and says, "I'm IF. Like, I'm not doing this. You kidding me? I don't believe Data is a toaster. I believe he's sentient and he has feelings, and I will not do this." But then she says, "If you don't prosecute, then there's no prosecution, and there'll be no hearing, and I will just make my ruling, and it'll just go and get dismantled." And Riker's put in this impossible position where to give Data a chance of survival, a chance of getting the right ruling, he has to be the villain and go against him.
Yeah. And even just on before that, like the fact that Picard is going to her is, showing the desperation, because
Oh, sure.
we learn earlier on she was in charge of his trial after the Stargazer mishap. So obviously it was quite harsh against him by the sounds of it. So there was a serious rivalry there.
As part of comparison here, I love how Picard's thing in the past that comes up every so often is the Stargazer, and it was a serious thing that's treated so, whereas Kirk, I kept wanting to say Shatner. But it's not Shatner. It's not Shatner. Say the character's name down. Right? Whereas Kirk's was when he cheated on his test in Starfleet Academy.
Anyway.
Yeah. I just love that they're very comparable in the way they're brought up, but Picard is like a really serious incident. It's this dark moment in his past.
We lost a ship.
Yeah. Whereas Kirk's is, I cheated and rigged the computer to do my business. It was an unwinnable situation, so I made it winnable, damn it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you're right. And there's a great little scene with
that. It's a huge big difference between those two characters. When you think,
oh sure,
Kirk's was unwinnable situation, I'm gonna win it anyway, and Picard's thing is no, he screwed up and lost the ship.
Well, he even has a line in this episode where he says, we don't just get to ignore Starfleet regulations when it's inconvenient. Like, that's kind of the point of regulations. That's kind of part of his speech to convince that we need to have this hearing. With Maddox especially, who's standing there going, he's a toaster, let's just take it in and I can take him apart, blah blah blah. So really really good. And there's a little scene with Riker where he's sort of looking up data schematics, and he sort of gets his smoking gun, as it were, for the case, and then he's happy for a split second because he's found the thing he needs, and he's like, oh wait, no, I'm sad.
But then he's like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it properly.
Yeah, he has to.
Because if he didn't, it would just and then he lost. It would just undermine it anyway. Because he wasn't putting in the effort.
Yeah. From our context, I think even in the story though, they make it very clear that she says to him, "If I don't believe you're giving us 100% at any point, I'm just going to call it there and then." And rule against Data.
Which I think seems perfectly fair because it's it's essentially rigging a jury at that point.
Oh sure, yeah. No jury, of course. It's just her.
No. But in comparatively.
Yeah, he can't just throw the case, which even though it seems like that should be something he should do, which plays into the whole integrity of Starfleet and the officers and them upholding to the highest standards. Yeah. And so we have this hearing. We have this hearing where obviously the first chunk of it is Riker interrogating Data and proving that he can bend a bar, which makes him very inhuman, showing that his arm can come off, and then literally the kill switch, which turns him off, and he just slumps over. And it makes him look, less than a being. It makes him look like he's just a machine, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically Riker's whole prosecution sort of rests on the idea of just proving that he's not a person. And
pretty solid argument.
It's solid, although even though I agree with Picard that ultimately it's not really relevant if we're looking at what makes life, as a.
It doesn't. Yeah. He's just banging on. No. This is a machine. Machine cannot be life. Is essentially the argument.
Yeah. Which I mean, even in real world today, I disagree with that. I don't think there is any machines that I would call life yet. But in the idea that we eventually have something with a real AI,
probably.
If something can learn, then it's life, to an extent.
That's a qualifier I'm not willing to agree to, because there are already many an algorithm that can learn.
You know what I'm trying to say?
I'm not sure I do.
Okay, if it can learn and be self-aware of its own existence. Okay. Algorithms are not self-aware. Don't try and tell me they are.
I mean, not to my knowledge. I mean, self-awareness is, you're essentially, I think, therefore I am. Essentially.
Okay.
If an algorithm can get to that, it's life, is kind of what you're saying.
I mean, ultimately, what I would consider life is just simply feeling something. So if a computer was scared that I was going to turn it off because it didn't want to be off, therefore,
probably alive.
At that point, I would say it's alive because it feels something, it's scared, or it's excited, or it's whatever. Anyway, that's as Philippa points out later on. She's not qualified to make these big philosophical questions. She's not qualified to answer them. Yeah, but so we have this, and it's like a really sort of dark ending, and Picard asks for a recess, and he has this fantastic scene with Guinan, where she starts, because he's going through sort of what's going on with Data, and she starts talking about, well, look at the appeal from Starfleet's point of view, why they want like more data. Like the idea of having lots of data, it's the idea of a disposable workforce. It's something that civilizations always kind of had, right? This idea of all these workers that you don't have to care about, that you can disregard, and that Data and the idea of a fleet of androids is like, hey, you can send them into battle without giving a shit. And it's because Picard says, because when Guinan asks him like how he's feeling, he's like, well, I've sent people into scarier battle or missions than this. Like I've definitely sent people on like suicide missions essentially before, and she's like, yeah, but this is the appeal of this, is to not have to care, right? It's the idea that this is disposable, and then he sort of clocks kind of what she's getting at, and he says, you're talking about slavery. That's what you're essentially talking about. And what I love about this, not only does it make a great dramatic point in the context of the episode, and kind of like, this is essentially what Data becomes. If we believe he's alive and they rule against it, we essentially, he's now a slave to anyone who considers him to be a person. And but I also love how it ties in to other science fiction. I love how this is something that comes up a lot in science fiction with robots and androids and AI.
It's a classic trope.
This idea of because something that often comes from it. I'll just briefly compare it to Battlestar Galactica for a second, because the whole premise at the start of that show is that they created robots and AI, and it was smart enough to learn and grow and essentially become sentient, and they treated it like a slave race. And because of that, it eventually revolted, fought back. And while you don't necessarily quite justify the genocide of like almost all the human population, you can't really blame them for fighting back and becoming an enemy. And the idea with Data here, I always go back to Superman as a comparison. To me, like, my answer in science fiction for robots and AI is always, it's the same thing as Superman. It just needs to be taught right from wrong. It just needs to have the parents that actually treat it values, right? In Data, and his surroundings of Starfleet, and especially now the Enterprise, he gets that. He has this around him. To a fair extent. So I really liked when this came up. Not both because of the actual the play on history, and sort of this is what it's alluding to. This idea, if they rule this, then forever robots, no matter how smart they get, because of this precedent, will be treated as something that is owned and not something that is alive. And Picard goes in then and makes this phenomenal speech about Data. He brings out the stuff, the items that he was taking away. This is where he brings out the Tashagram, as I'm calling it.
Yeah, sure, why not?
The Tashagram. And not only does he bring it out, he says, okay, you've got no one else, none of the other crew members, and an item like this, so why do you have Tasha? And he says, well, I promised I wouldn't say. And if I recall, that was true. She did make a promise not to tell anyone.
Yeah.
But the events of the Naked Now are dramatically relevant in this episode, because he has a hologram of her because they were close, and as in his own words, they were intimate. And I love the reactions around the room when he says that.
The most surprising thing here is that not that Data has feelings, obviously, that's not surprising, but that he had feelings about this specifically, positive feelings about this.
Yeah, we didn't know this. This is actually a nice little kind of surprise for us, actually. I think it's just kind of sweet, though, that he, we find this out, that this meant something to him, when it's something that, it's just been kind of a bit of a joke for us, for the last season or so. And it kind of made it a little bit sweeter. And this moment here, even, Riker, like, he kind of lets out just a little bit of a smirk. He sort of puts his head down so no one can see him, kind of, but you can just see a little bit of a smirk where he's like, oh, this is a really good case he's making here. And he's got a book that Picard gave him because it has value. He's got his medals because they mean something to him. And Picard essentially just goes down this speech of saying, if you set a precedent here today, like, this will be used as the case evidence. This will be used forever to justify why a person that's created of this nature is treated this way. And of course, he compares the fact that, he was created by humans, but so are we. Like, human beings create other humans all the time. That's how it works.
Yeah. But he goes, hey, Maddox, you're trying to literally replicate this and have one on every ship, right? If not more, was his purpose. Okay, one Data, that's an anomaly, right? 1,000 of them? Well, that's a race then at that point. And how are they going to feel?
Yeah.
When they look back at this ruling.
But not only that, he points out, of course, that Starfleet is the whole purpose of Starfleet and the Federation is to seek out and find new life. And he just points to data and says, "There it is. There is the new life. This is where we have to make these tough choices." And all of our, and he doesn't go on to say this next bit, but this is what he's implying. All of our rules about interacting with our life, the Prime Directive, all of it still applies to him.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that he's made of nuts and bolts or whatever synthetic material, because it's probably more advanced than that because it's Star Trek. But it doesn't matter. He's still life. And therefore you can't. And ultimately, Philippa, when she makes her ruling, can't definitively say that he is life, but she does say, "I don't really know if I've got a soul. This is something human beings have been debating forever. Is like, do we have this idea of a soul? And I don't know if I have one. I don't know if Data's got one, but he should probably be allowed to try and discover that for himself. Like, he should be able to ask that question himself." So I can't really say if he's life or not for sure, but under no circumstance am I going to limit the future of who he is or any of his potential future race are. And Data, even after the fact, goes up to him and says, "Look, your thinking is sound, and one day this might be a good idea. So continue your work, but it's not the time yet."
Which tells me that, going back to what I said earlier, where the whole thing for him was he was scared he'd lose his feelings, his experiences, right? He'd still have the knowledge, but he'd lose the experience.
Yeah.
The fact that if he believed that this was close to actually happening, that there would be, creating more life like him, essentially, he'd be willing to put that on the line. He'd be willing to personally risk that to create more life, as opposed to just it's not an unequivocal no, I'm never doing that.
And what's more of a sentient being than someone who's willing to put his life on the line for others? So there's a beauty to it. This episode does what Star Trek's best at. It takes a moral idea, just a simple idea, and has a debate take place about that idea. That's what it is. And obviously, we very much side on one point of view in this.
It's kind of a clearly right and wrong side.
But it doesn't matter because there is still this clear debate, and even though we think there's the easy right answer here, it doesn't change the fact that this debate would happen every time. No matter what point in the future this comes up, this debate is going to happen.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who argue that they shouldn't have rights and that we should be able to, use them as property. That is always going to be a debate in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is a
I do
have a couple of nitpicks. But...
I'll even name you a few locations that might side on the on the property side. I'm not going to, but I could.
Okay.
I was making it clear.
I thought you were going to have fun with it.
No. Certain type of person I'm thinking of, but you go on. What's your nitpicks?
Oh, nitpicks. I think one would be when Picard is losing in that first bit. Where Riker's pointing out all these things. He doesn't really argue back, which and a lot of them I think are easy to argue back points. And Picard just looks a bit lost. Like, Riker's going, he takes off the arm and he's like, "Hey, look at this. It's wires carrying information." And Picard, there's no, well, you've got a neural network of, it's just an organic version. You got veins carrying blood. There's nothing to even attempt to fight back. When Riker hits the off switch, Picard doesn't say, "Well, I could just hit you on the back of the head and you'd be unconscious. It'd be the same." Like, my point is, that he could have at least put up at least a show of a fight.
Well, that's kind of what he does in the next day. He just wants to recess to actually think about what his argument is.
Well, no, but the thing is that when he comes back with the arguments, they are completely different. They don't answer those points at all. He kind of just ignores those and goes off in his own direction.
Not entirely. The one about humans, replicating, it's kind of along the same lines as the same wavelength of that, though. Is that okay? So instead of like physical, or natural, veins and whatever, it's instead of biological, it's mechanical. But
sure.
It's not a big deal to me. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Although I'm a little disappointed that there was not a demonstration where they got like a random incident to knock out just to prove his point.
Yeah. Other nitpicks. There was just no other witnesses outside of this room. Like, if you're going to call witness testimony, I feel it could have benefited from some of the crew.
I thought it was going to do that. Before I watched the episode, I assumed that was going to be part of it because I expected...
even last week we were saying, maybe the doctor,
yeah, Pulaski coming in to sort of testify would be interesting.
And it didn't have to be her specifically, but I feel like a character witness outside of just Data himself might have helped.
I think that's a runtime thing. I don't think that's
It probably is.
I don't think that's a creative choice. I think that's a choice of they wanted all the setup to naturally get there, and I think all the setup's really good, so I wouldn't cut any of it.
No, I agree. And my only other one that I do have, this is minor, but could have been fixed. That one I agree. Okay, no, it's a runtime thing. So after the case is decided, and it's obviously it's ruled in Data's favor, Maddox calls Data him for the first time instead of it, and it gets commented on. I didn't like that. It was oh look, hey, in case you missed that, he said he. It felt like it would just kind of point it out for in case you missed it. I think I would have much preferred it if he'd said it and it was left there like that.
Okay, I don't really have a problem with her pointing out though, because I think he's done it enough in front of them that I buy that they would comment on it.
Maybe, yeah.
I buy that she would. If your argument is that she should have just said it and it should have just lingered for a second and cut away, then sure, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I actually think it'd be weird though if she just didn't say anything, because it would be really noticeable, because he has constantly throughout the entire episode referred to him as it.
Yeah, it was very noticeable, which is why I felt like I didn't need the extra bit of them pointing it out, because it was so immediately obvious when he said it, and it felt like, hey, just in case you missed it, we're gonna make sure you noticed. It is how it felt to me.
This is such a Connor nitpick.
It is. I know. That's why I left that one till last.
As a patented Connor nitpick, if I ever heard one.
Yeah.
The episode's great, and the final scene, of course, is Riker, well, happy that the outcome has happened. He's in the ready room because Data comes in. He's like, "Oh, it's a celebration in the holodeck. We're all partying on my honor. Come, bearded man of chest hair." And he's like, I don't deserve to celebrate Rikers. I don't deserve to celebrate Data because I almost got you killed.
Put you away.
Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah, but as I understand it, like, if you hadn't accepted that, then I would have definitely went and under the procedures. And you took this great burden, which must have been very difficult, so that I'd have a chance of survival, and I will never forget that. And I'm not going to lie, this was kind of an emotional little scene. Him saying that he understood that this was difficult and that this will always mean a lot to him. And Riker sort of smiling at him when he said that. I don't know. It hit me.
Great, yeah.
It hit me.
It's a great episode.
It was a perfect little ending to it. And yeah, I mean, like I say, this is Star Trek at its best. It's a simple dilemma that is debated, and it's kind of why I know a lot of people who are fans of classic Trek, Next Gen and that era, don't like the newer stuff, because the newer stuff is definitely more of an action focused entity.
It's more modern sci-fi, right? Should we say?
Well, I mean, but you get action sci-fi back in these days as well.
Oh no, you did, but I don't feel this level of sci-fi that we have now. I feel often there's not a lot of it now. It's kind of forgotten.
Well, there isn't, but that doesn't make the other sci-fi modern, because it always existed.
Okay, sure, but is the de facto modern style?
Sure, big and dumb with explosions.
Yeah. Although I think dumb is a little unfair, especially for season 2 of Discovery.
I mean, it gets a lot of dumb at points, even in season 2. And I like season 2.
It gets a little dumb, but I mean, it's not as dumb as it's not just big and dumb.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest, this has had plenty of dumb.
Oh, it has. There's definitely been bad episodes. No one's disputing that, but yeah. But I mean, there's an argument for why Star Trek maybe shouldn't be an action show, because maybe the fact that there's less of this type of sci-fi today, this is why it should exist. This is why it should still stay true to what it is, because we have a ton of other sci-fi franchises that will do the action.
I happen to agree, and here's the thing. Hey, CBS All Access want Trek all year round. Hey, let's have 2 action shows and 2 non-action shows. Why not?
Well, when they finally show me a non-action show, I'll agree with that sentiment. So
okay, they might not. I'm saying they have acknowledged that there is a need for the shows to be different, so that they don't burn out and everyone feeling the same thing. That is a really easy way to do it.
Yeah, no, it is if they actually go through with it.
Yeah.
Picard might be that, but the thing is a trailer tends to be quick cut and action packed because it's a trailer.
It's hard to judge from the trailer. Yeah.
So from the trailer, it looks like another action show, but it could actually be a lot more slow paced. It could be a lot more like Next Gen.
It could be, yeah.
For all we know. But yeah, Measure of a Man is a fantastic episode, and it did not disappoint based on its reputation. It made a great episode last week as well. So I mean, hey. I was gonna say. I mean, we've had 2 easily better episodes in all of season 1. 9 episodes into season 2. So even if even if the rest of this season is just lukewarm,
it's still better than season 1.
Yeah, it's at that point.
Yeah, like every other episode would have to be terrible for it to average out now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking forward to the clip show, admittedly, but I mean that's fine.
Yeah, but that's one terrible episode. I mean, I'm sure there's probably...
But I've got this fear it's lingering over the season now.
It is.
This dark cloud. Anyway, so what is coming next episode then? Pardon me. The Dauphin, if I'm saying that correct. That's Dauphin. Dauphin.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. The Dauphin. Here's the description. Oh, you'll have a description that starts with the word Wesley, don't you? Wesley falls for the young future leader of Dalid 4, unaware just how dangerous the girl's protective and overly restrictive guardian can be. This is a Wesley romance episode.
I hate this already. Streak over. Streak over.
The Dauphin walked in like Brock Lesnar and killed the streak. That's a shame. I know Carr doesn't get that reference, but hopefully some of you in the audience do.
I'm sure they did. To me, a shave of the head, but I mean... Yep,
there you go. The Dauphin. We'll be back for that next week. Let us know what you thought of Measure of a Man in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And I certainly don't mind trivia on the episodes when relevant. There was a good bit of trivia for the episode where Data had the beard. There was a deleted scene that was never shot, I don't think, if I remember the comment right. I could be misremembering that. But there was a deleted scene where he also tried to be bald to match Picard. So it was like a running gag that he was trying to like take the visual styles of various crew members. Never happened, but
cool.
That was a cool bit of trivia. Yeah. So yeah, by all means, so like and subscribe. You can rate the podcast on the podcast app that you use. Apple Podcast being the most common one. 5 stars helps more people find the show. You can support us financially, of course, over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. We can support us for as little as $1 per month, and that gets you a bonus episode of a few different movie podcasts that we do. Soon it'll give you a bonus already cancelled that's exclusive to Patreon. There'll be a vote actually on Patreon over the next few weeks, selecting what that show is going to be. Go and have a look, and that'll be exclusive to patrons once it launches sometime in the end of October. So go and have a look. But that is us. Check out the other stuff we do. Me and Tower do classic Twilight Zone discussions every week, kind of similar to this, but Twilight Zone, so it might be in your wheelhouse. Check out the sci-fi movie podcast that we also do called The Ace, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, for other sci-fi stuff. Some of which is old, some of which is new. Kind of a mix. That is. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Keep watching Star Trek. And to everyone but Connor, live long and prosper.